I am back and I am on a new sewing venture, so I'm going to take you all with me. I plan on making Wano Luffy for a con that may or may not happen by the end of the year. Isn't this great? This is the pattern I will be using, though I do have to make a few adjustments because this is technically kimono and I'm making a yukata. But what is the difference, you might ask? Kimonos tend to be a lot more formal and made out of nicer fabrics. Mine is going to be made out of this linen and this cotton for the lining. Kimonos also have this double collar that you can see here, whereas yukata only have one. Kimono sleeves also have various lengths, as you can see, whereas yukata are usually only short. You can also see on this pattern that the sleeves are open in the back, which is a women-only thing for kimono. So I'm actually going to have to readjust that on my pattern and make it closed because men's are usually always closed. I am by no means any kind of expert on historical Japanese fashion, but I think it's important when you're making something to actually do a little bit of research so you know exactly what you're making and can make adjustments as you see fit if you can't find the exact pattern you need. So now that we have our fabric and our pattern and all the rest of our shit figured out, let's get to sewing. Okay, so first we're just going to cut out the fabric and lining, iron everything smooth. Then we're going to start following directions, sort of starting with the lining. Just sewing all of the lining up piece by piece according to the instructions, with the exception of the sleeves. And remember to iron all of your seams. Again, we're doing the sleeves a little differently because we don't want that back piece to be open like in this one, so we're just going to sew it up. That's why we're doing the lining right now. And with the lining done, you should have something that looks like this. On my last video, we worked on the lining for this, and now we're going to actually start on the outside of Luffy's yukata. I've gone ahead and sewn up part of it, which you can see here, that part's the back. And I did things this way because the next step is figuring out the patches, how big they're going to be, and where the hell they're going to go. So I needed it sewn for all that. So to pattern out the squares, I'm actually going to use Christmas wrapping paper. The patches are all squared, so having this 1-inch grid mark is really going to help me map out everything. Okay, so this is what I ended up with. It looks like absolute garbage, but it's really just to help me visualize how everything looks and how it proportionally will work on my body. So I've gone ahead and cut out all the squares for my patches. And for the blue circles in the patches, I'm actually going to be using the Cricut Invisible Fuse Ink. After using the iron to press it in, we have color. Now only like 7 more of these to do. Okay, so all of our little patches are done now. So I'm just going to use Heat and Bond Light to apply them to the fabric. You can use the heavy version if you don't want to sew, but I'm not. So just applying it to the back, and if your edges are fucked up like mine, you can go ahead and just recut them nicely so they look better. After that, I'm just laying them all down, making sure to take off the paper backing. And yeah, just ironing them all on at this point, except for the bottom two, and make sure to cut some of those corners like I just showed. So these are the bottom two I'm not doing because they overlap with an edge that I haven't sewn together yet, so we're waiting. Now we're going to take some thread that vaguely looks like the matching color, and I'm going to satin stitch everything that has its own edge, not like this shitty edge, which is going to just be sewn together anyway. And while you're satin stitching, if you notice that some of your edges are wrinkled from where you were sewing, you can just press them and then they look all nice, and then you just keep repeating this process until you just want to cry. Cool. Alright, it's part 5 of me making this simple costume more complicated than necessary. So now that we have most of the patches nicely sewn on, we need to make it look like an incompetent child actually did all this by adding all those stupid little patchy lines. I decided to do this by hand with some thicker thread so it looks more handmade. And I went ahead and spaced out all the lines and marked out where and how long they were going to be. Now I'm just going to go in with a back stitch to fill them all in. And then you get something like this and you repeat until you die. We are on part 6 of making a simple costume more difficult than necessary. On the last video we finished 6 of the patches and now we can move on to the final 2. I'm just gonna sew up the remaining seams, as you can see, along the outside and the length. And don't forget to iron your seams, and I'm just gonna start doing everything all over again until I ran out of fucking thread. And then I had to walk my ass back to Joann's and buy more for just 15 inches of this goddamn thread. Ah! But then you can just finally finish. And yay. Alright, with both the fashion layer and the lining done, we're going to attach the two, starting with the sleeves. So I'm going to start by turning the fashion layer sleeves inside out, and now we take the lining and match it up with the outer opening. The right sides obviously must be together. Then we just sew around the sleeve hole and pull the fashion layer out, and the lining should follow along. So next up is the bottom hem, and again, right sides together, we sew and then flip out and then iron. I went ahead and did a flat line there. And then I just went and did a base stitch all along where the collar will be. And now we're just gonna continue with the actual pattern and following along based on that, except this collar piece only goes to about halfway, and that looks really fucking stupid. So I'm just gonna make the whole piece longer and then sew it according to the instructions. And then yeah, just attach some snaps if you want, or some ribbon to help tie the pieces together on the inside, and your yukata is done. Nice. Part 8 of Luffy, and I'm finally doing this belt. So I just cut out a long piece of rectangle and then I serged and ironed it. Really fucking simple. I then went and serged the edges because no one's gonna see that shit anyway. And then I folded them over and then I sewed them. That way it kind of looks like it's cinched, because that is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna hide the little tails. See? Haha, hidden. So clever. Wow. And I marked where they hit, and I'm just gonna sew some motherfucking snaps on. And remember to sew your snaps around the holes and not like up and down through holes, if that makes sense. Okay, well, there's some fucking snaps on this thing. Yay, all nice. And now I have it laid out and it looks all great. Now I just gotta add this bow, which means more rectangle. So I did almost the exact same thing, except I sewed up one side. See, it's right there. And then I tied it in a knot, and then I'm gonna trim down the extras so that it matches on the other side. And I just did a super simple ladder stitch, but you can glue it if you want, I don't care. And then I'm just gonna stitch this on, and yeah, that means that this costume is mostly done. Yeah, woo, there's a buppo. Yeah, wiggle that shit. Yeah, woo. Hope you enjoyed the progress. Thanks.